what? Engagement is a good thing. And the more people that are engaged in the project, the better the outcome. That's my opinion. Okay, so I always like to do the tech update at the beginning. So if we could hear from you, Meta, that would be great.
Sounds good. Can you see my screen?
Yes, I can see it.
Great. All right, I'm going to present today's technical update. We are in the process of relaunching the testnet. We have the required number of approvals for the Genesis block. Validating nodes have the block and are processing it. We are seeing performance issues in validating the Genesis block. We know this. This is not a surprise to those of us in the development team. We have a open task to go ahead and address the performance of validation of the Genesis block. So this is something we took on the entire Genesis block as part of this Node 7 launch because we wanted to understand what it would take, what the Genesis ceremony would look like with the full block. So we have a good understanding of what it is we need to look at moving forward. Once the testnet is launched, prospective validators will be able to bond onto the testnet. It is my intention to publish the deploy endpoints of the nodes run by Pyrofex, so that bonding requests can be sent by those nodes. And it's also my intention to have those nodes proposing at some regular interval. One of the SREs is in the process of writing a script to support that and getting those scripts on those machines. So you can expect to be able to send a bonding request to those nodes and see a proposal of a block come within a reasonable amount of time. So right now, propose is very manual, and there's no any reason why we can't script it out. So that's what's going to happen. Rowline team is working hard on the design of Peak and RSpace. It's under review, and implementation is expected to complete the sprint. So we need Peak in order to do merging of blocks. That's an important feature in order for us to build a DAG. So the team determined that that was the highest priority thing to work on, and I agreed. And so they're in the process of implementing that right now. Stack safety of serialization interpreter, PR is expected this week. With that, we will be wrapping up these. I have been informed that there will be no other stack safety work to do on the interpreter, at least for the time being. And Arturo will be moving on to other tasks in the interpreter, which is great news. The generative tests are exposing bugs in the interpreter. It exposed 4 bugs the last couple of times it ran, so that's good news in the fact that we're finding the bugs. I'm going to go ahead and get those fixed, and we'll continue running the generative tests against the interpreter. Casper team, contracts are in code review for the removal of unforgeable names. Mike Birch promised to get those in by Tuesday or Wednesday, and as usual, he's gotten them in on time. And he will be moving on to unbonding. And I believe Kent is working on slashing conditions. I did not hear from him this morning, but that is his highest priority item. We have new integration tests that were authored by community members, so many thanks to Will Q. He built some Casper integration tests, and we'll be including those in the repository. And they already exposed a bug in block passing with a star-shaped network, so that was kind of cool to find that issue. Node team continues to make improvements in threading and chunking, and we started working on a client interface for dApp developers. This client interface, as you're well aware, well, those of you that have run the gRPC APIs in the node are well aware that you have to reinstantiate the node to every time you do a deploy, every time you do a propose, which is fine for propose, but it's not really that user-friendly if you want to listen at a name or do deploys or run eval, right? Ideally, you should just run the client application once. It instantiates it, creates all the protos, and provides commands that you can run eval, you can do a deploy, you can generate unforgeable names, you can do a variety of things via this client interface without needing the entire RNode package. So that's the spirit of this client interface. It'll probably be a command line interface, but it will deploy separate. It'll ship separately from RNode, but it'll be a nice thing for dApp developers to have a one place where they can get access to all the gRPC endpoints. Let me know if anyone has questions about that, or that sounds kind of curious.
Is there a write-up of that? What's
the ticket is core 1162.
Perfect. Thank you.
The let's see, moving along here, we're working on catching unhandled exceptions. I'm still seeing exceptions for gRPC API in the console, and that's making me a little irritated. I mean, at this point, we should be catching all those unhandled exceptions, and only if there's actually an error should it be dumping anything to the console. You'll probably notice with Node 7, we suppressed all the protocol handshake messages. We felt that portion of the code base is fairly stable and it didn't need to clutter the log. So we'll continue making sure that the server log is nice and clean. Storage team, remove the sync var, one of 6 of them from replay RSpace. We're observing a significant improvement in performance on the replay side. So as I had said before, replay was being throttled by something and we weren't quite sure what it was. Well, we found that it was the sync var. And replay now, I have not tested this myself, but replay should be exhibiting the exact same or very close to the same performance as initial deploy COM events, which is nice. It will speed up it'll reduce the latency for finalization, right? So there's 2 phases on the blockchain. There's the initial execution of transactions, but then there is the time to finalization. Both of them need to be fast. They need to be equally fast. So this addresses the second, not the first. We also are working on creating a separate thread pool for RSpace. This addresses the issues with propose hanging. So if you see propose hanging, what has probably happened is your node has attempted to propose a block at the same time it received a block. And there's a little bit of thread locking that's happening in that specific race condition. I anticipate that once there's a separate thread pool for RSpace, this problem should go away. It won't mean that propose is necessarily faster. It just won't hang and the thread won't get locked, right? There will be some kind of prioritization that the node will work with internally. We're combining the in-memory hot store with sync var removal to see what kind of performance boost we're getting. And we're doing more R&D on RSpace performance, right? So we're looking at, as I have said, since RCon 3, that there's a lot of work to do on performance. And so this just continues the investigative, research and development work around what are the opportunities to improve the performance of RSpace. We're also looking at, as I said, the performance of the Genesis block, right? The interesting thing with the Genesis block is we're observing very low CPU utilization and very high memory utilization, which is very strange. So I think we can do something better there. So that's what the guys are going to look at. SRE team supporting the relaunch of testnet, doing more performance testing of the code, and moving RSong into continuous integration. I'd like to get Grafana updated so we can see Grafana against the testnet validators. So I'll be working with SRE team to get that done. More on the testnet. Those of you that have been watching the testnet relaunch, the Genesis ceremony started yesterday and it did conclude today. So that was good. We had a 24-hour time limit. We were able to get the necessary signatures. It did contain the rock balances from the specified Ethereum block height as a proof of concept. So we have tested the Rev issuance as part of this process to see, one, that it will work. It may take long, but it does work. And we also want to let that inform us on what kind of footprint we need for the validators. So memory and cores and time, right? So again, we're learning about what it takes to launch the Genesis block as part of this process. We had 15 nodes that were able to validate and send an approval block to approval back to the Bootstrap node, and we knew that going in that the process was too slow, like I've indicated before. We had a few nodes that crashed with out-of-memory errors, and we have 11 nodes that appear to be processing the block. So we are now at a stage where the Genesis validators are processing the Genesis block. Once they process the Genesis block, the testnet will be available to accept bonding requests. Incentivized testnet, we continue to work on developing the program, and hopefully we'll have a web page that'll launch at the end of this month. And startup challenges around December. I'm going to open it up to questions. I'm looking in the chat right now. Oh, good. People are just informing on end client integrations and other information for the community. So are there any questions?
Yeah, Meta, this is Jonathan. Can you give us some more color about the plans for the incentivized testnet? I think that's pretty important given our current status with validators and so forth.
Sure. I'd like to turn that over to Kelly because she's really been working with Phil on that. Kelly, do you want to share something?
Sure, thanks. We are working as a team. We have Phil Strouch as a community member who is on contract to help lead this program. Myself, also working very closely with the marketing team. The goal truly is to incentivize people to, number one, engage with the platform, and number two, to help stress and help us understand how the network works. These games looks to be, I believe there will be about 22 distinct games. They will test, the stability of the network, load on the network, pushing contracts through, all the things that we're really curious to understand about what that network can do when under attack. We use the metaphor of the series games is a bit of an arcade game, and we're going to attack it and see what happens. The games will take place starting in December across 3 rounds, and there are multiple prize pools for each of those games, and we're looking forward to really encouraging people to engage with the platform and give it a try.
Thanks for that. That sounds terrific.
So, Meta, a question about more of roadmap around Casper. Our ability as a project to declare proof of stake a success is really important. And so when will Casper be feature complete?
That's a good question. So there's a few things that need to happen in order for Casper to be feature complete. One of them is we need to have the ability to merge blocks to build a real DAG. The other one is we need to be able to restore the state. So when a validating node shuts down, it's able to rejoin fairly quickly and obtain the state. So I would say that, and then there's the economic security as well, right? And so testnet, the validators need to get transaction fees. So it is my intention to have all of that in place probably by node 9.
Okay.
Because we're building a brand new block store, right? So the brand new block store comes in this sprint, and then we will need to then start working with passing around the fork choice tip, making sure the state can be recovered from effectively, sharing transactions fees, right, with the validator set, and getting all the economic security in place. Slashing and unbonding are coming this sprint. So I think it's safe to say that by node 9 will be completely feature complete.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. I mean, with respects to Casper, right? Other questions?
So Meta, we've been chatting a little bit in Discord about the performance on RSpace. So as I understand it, currently it's only the in-memory solution that has the 4x improvement. But that's against the fact that the in-memory solution doesn't actually get us to store. I just want to verify that that's correct.
The in-memory solution does not get us to store.
Right.
As I understand it, what's being built is a hybrid model. It's in-memory for the hot store and LMDB for the cold store.
And that in-memory solution still only gets us 4x against the 1500 COM events per second. Is that correct?
I haven't done the measuring yet, so I can't tell you. Until I see it with the whites of my eyes, I don't want to say. And I haven't seen the Grafana dashboards that show me exactly what the numbers are.
Okay, so but it was reported by Dom as a 4x improvement. Is that correct?
I believe it's for replay. It is not for initial processing of transaction. It is in replay. Okay. The removal of the sync var was throttling replay RSpace.
Okay, so just to be clear then, the removal of the sync var had no 4x improvement on the COM event rate.
It does, but with respects to validation. So if you remember, when we were doing that, when we were looking at validation, for some reason, validation looked like it was much more depressed. It wasn't, we could pretty much consistently always see reasonable to high throughput levels on a produce and consume on propose. But then when we went into replay, we would see that replay was giving us like a very, very low number, significantly lower. And so from my understanding, in talking with Dom today, I spoke with him extensively, the removal of the sync var has provided a positive impact in replay R space such that it almost matches what is happening with deploy R space. And that's very good. I mean, that is a very good thing because that means our latency to finalization is significantly improved.
Good. But we have a significant, what rough estimates on the path to production from the in-memory model?
I don't have that yet. So we just implemented it. We haven't estimated the amount of work that needs to be done to, one, do profiling to see how much memory could potentially be consumed in-memory using the in-memory solution. Two, to see what buffering and caching needs to be put in place to have it be production ready. We don't have those numbers yet. I think I indicated that we need to estimate that and get back to you and tell you what it is, what it looks like.
Okay. And what effort are we putting on the other bottleneck debugging?
Dom is focusing on the R&D on that. So he's doing all the research and he's fully focused on that piece.
Okay, good. So if we have any sort of thoughts about, so we can get a comparison on the two, but right now it seems to me that we know that the pure LMDB capacity is not being touched. There's some throttling that doesn't allow us to realize the pure LMD capacity. So if we had some sense of, so those are we have two different paths, right? And if we're not seeing the kind of capacity that we get from LMDB with the hybrid store, then we really want to look at the bang for buck is essentially what we need to understand. So that would be it would be very good if we can get as clear an answer on that as we possibly can, right? If we have lots and lots of buck for not as much bang on the hybrid store versus considerably more bang but only one developer working on it for the removing the bottleneck, there seems to be a clear choice there.
Right. Yep.
Good. Okay.
I mean, I can't put the whole team on our space for obvious reasons, right? But I mean, we could definitely have Wukash actually work with Dom, and Wukash and Dom work very closely together. So they're right now doing divide and conquer because they knew they had a high degree of confidence that the sync var, remove the sync var would yield results. And that's why Wukash went and worked on that, and Dom is doing the investigation, right? Two of them work very, very closely together. So I'm sure that they will join forces when they feel. I trust their ability to manage their time.
Sure, of course.
What needs to be done.
Exactly. It's just that the hybrid approach, it doesn't give us any more insight into the bottlenecking issue. So, good. Thank you very much.
I had a question from Rich Jensen. He wanted to know what the continuous integration means for RSong project management deployment. So the continuous integration piece is really good in that it will automatically build and test the RSong application. Furthermore, I met with Kvan earlier this week, and he is going to create some integration tests against the RChain project, such that the requirements for RSong are captured in the form of integration and/or unit tests. So we don't inadvertently break, have any breaking changes that go into, or if we do put in a breaking change, we're at least informed of that via an integration test, so we can manage the dependencies between the two projects via an integration test. So having RSong under CI is good because it enables rapid development and testing, right, without having to manually build and release. So that's that question, Rich. So if you have more questions, don't hesitate to ask.
Yeah. So
any other questions?
So this is another example of why having lots of these kinds of projects really help with the stability, right? The more we have, examples like Proof and RSong and other examples coming online, the more the project gets kind of hemmed in and pressurized. we need to put it in a pressure cooker now. And I'll speak to that in just a little bit. If Reflective wants to give an update, we can move over to there, and then I want to get an update from Ian on the ballots, what we're seeing so far, and then we have some more items to discuss. So, Reflective, are you guys ready?
Yep. Yep, sure. Thanks, Greg. This is just a real quick update from our side. We've been spending a lot of time lately, most of our time actually, working with our portfolios and focusing, quite frankly, on sort of calming the waters as much as we can in light of all the chaos that's been happening and everything that they've heard. So it's not easy, and they have every right to be concerned. So we're doing our best to work with them and help them out through all of this. And that's pretty much what we've been focused on for the last couple of weeks. So that's all I have from Reflective.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it, Greg. Thanks. Ian, are you ready to give an update on the sort of intermediate results from the ballots?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't have any numbers. That's in the hands of Govern and NetVote right now. But the vote concluded at 3 a.m. I'm sorry, at midnight Pacific, or 3 a.m. Eastern. And it looks like we have not really had too many issues at all. We've had maybe one or two people who have been coming in, maybe had some receipt problems with the email, and we've been dealing with those one at a time. But so far, it looks pretty good, and we're all looking forward to finding the results from NetVote.
Do you have any sense of voter turnout, percentage of eligible voters?
I do not. So that would be in the hands of NetVote, how many people have actually completed the ballot. I mean, I can tell you how many were sent out.
Yeah, yeah. That
Sure.
would be...
So we had, so including a couple resends from people who had trouble receiving, it was 892. 892 is the number.
And that was the total number of eligible voters?
Total number of eligible voters was just a few less than that, because like I said, there were some resends in that number.
Ian,
Yeah.
I thought that I was told that there were 1,630 something members of the cooperative.
Yeah, that's true. I think last count was 1631 or 1632.
So how come there are only 800 eligible ballots?
No, those are the number of people who did the ID verification.
So somebody who is, so I thought ID verification was a requirement of membership. Is that not the case?
That's not the case right now, no.
In order to be marked as a member on Discord, you have to have gone through the ID verification.
That's true.
So there are members who, okay, so I'm just completely confused.
Yeah, it's easy to get confused. I understand your confusion. So when people register via the website and pay the $20, they're marked as a member, but that doesn't mean that they've been ID verified. And only ID verified members are eligible for voting.
I think this is actually very unclear to a large part of a community, the various stages of membership. Like, I'm a member. Well, I'm not a member, capital M.
Sure.
So Jonathan, I think it's more than unclear. I think there's, for instance, in May or April, Ian pointed out to me, or maybe Greg, that there's criteria A, B, and C for being an active member. Greg, did you get to vote in this election?
I did. I was sent a ballot.
Yeah,
And
actually,
have you made any purchases from the cooperative in the last 12 calendar months?
So that's not the only criteria for becoming a member or for being a member in good standing. There are several OR criteria that are listed as a part of the.
So did you send to the cooperative email address a $10 check for updating your membership?
I have certainly provided the email address, and I don't know if I've sent the $10 check. I'll go check.
Or perhaps the board has acted in its capacity that was passed in a board resolution. that would allow you to vote even if it's been 12 months.
No, I don't think that that's the case. But this has always been the case. If we don't have such a distinction, then people can buy memberships and overrun the co-op. I think most people would be very, very unhappy if you could buy votes. So, and in particular, there would be no way to check that the member that's voting is not a bot. So you could overrun the co-op at a reasonable cost and buy votes, and that's so without KYC, that Sybil attack is a very real thing.
Oh, sure. No, I don't think anybody is disagreeing with KYC. I think the question is the articles of incorporation that don't seem to reflect our actual practice.
I think that they do for the most part, but if there are places where we need to tighten it up, that's a good thing. We can certainly tighten it up.
Okay, Greg, I'll look into that, okay?
Great, thanks very much. Okay, so we have a few other things to get through, but I wanted to sort of preface or foreshadow tonight's discussion with just a few slides that we in order to get the community to get a sense of what's going on in the marketplace. And what it is our responsibility to do.
Guys, leave me on that.
So here's the node milestones, the node release dates, and you can certainly go and check to see what is in each release. Starting from node.hello, which came out on the 22nd of December, up through a node 7, which was just released. And I want people to take a look at whether or not the market is actually watching this project at all. And and in particular, is the market signal in any way indicative of the technical progress? So let's take a look at the market signal. So here's the market signal, right? So essentially it's been a steady decline until here with a small spike around April. Now let's map that against the node releases and the features. And I think what we can see pretty clearly is that if we were to believe that the market signal was a referendum on what we're doing, then it would be a big thumbs down on what we're doing. But I don't think anybody here in this project believes that that's the case. I don't think anyone here thinks that as a result of the Node 6 release, we ought to be at this point in terms of the reception by the market. In point of fact, I would think it would go the other way around entirely. That as a result of Node 6 and Node 7, but in particular Node 6, and I'll get to why that's the case, that the market ought to value this project in a completely different way. So let's add a little bit more color to this. So it's right around Node 3 that I woke up in a cold sweat and said, holy crap, we have to have validators in order to have this network secure. And I need to have more data from the market than if you build it, they will come. And by July, we started to have really, really clear indication of what was happening with respect to the validator response. By August, we had a very clear indication of what was happening with respect to validator response. And here's where we hit testnet. And this is the market response. So what I want people to recognize is that the market signal is clearly divorced and separated from what we're actually delivering. The market isn't watching the tech at all. If they were watching the tech, then at this point, when we showed that we had a real live data market app that was serving extremely high volumes of data in real time under load, then the market should have gone, wow, a public permissionless network that is pure proof of stake, delivering that level of performance, that's unheard of. So it seems to me that it is our job as a community, certainly the cooperative staff, but also as a community entirely, to get the word out about where we are in the project. That if we were to address the disconnect between the market signal and what we're actually delivering, then we would start to see a turnaround with respect to the I don't want to say chaos, but with respect to some of the angst and worry and tension. In point of fact, I feel incredibly confident about the technology, and I feel incredibly confident that were people to understand what we have delivered, the technological value and the marketplace value of what we have delivered, then there would be a completely different response by the market. And so it's up to us to look at this data and look at the disconnect between what's going on, what we're actually delivering, and how the market responds, and to start to turn that tide. And that has almost nothing, as we can see, the major drop is from here to here. And that's before we ever have any word or issues with immersion. Right? So here's the major drop. And so what we really need to be looking at is how we change the way the market perceives us, because we have the best damn project on the planet. There's no question about that. It is absolutely the case that what we've delivered so far is unprecedented. And the other piece of the puzzle, and this is the thing that is really hard for people to understand, that if we don't deliver on Venus, then this project will be in the same risk as Solidity and all of the other projects and all of the other blockchain 3.0 projects. That's because, and it will be much worse than the situation with Ethereum. At least Ethereum was throttled in terms of its transaction rates. And so if you had broken or busted smart contracts, then it would take a good long time before they were drained of all their funds under an attack. However, in this particular case, it won't take but a blink of an eye, even at our current performance rates, to drain faulty contracts of their funds. So without the additional formal methods and without the additional pieces that we need to put in place in order to prevent that, there is no benefit. In fact, there's much, much greater risk to a project like this because we've suddenly unthrottled the transaction rates. So these are the two, and as a result, we have this enormous promise in front of us, right? So I think as Meta said, we sell developers on the speed, but then we really have to sell the market on the correctness and the correct by construction aspects of this, which differentiate us from every other blockchain 3.0 project. There is no other blockchain 3.0 project that has this characteristic or capacity. There is no other project that has, more than 20 years of research that is being deployed against providing those features. So what I'd love to do is to change the conversation into a conversation about how we get the word out about what is being delivered, because I think that will turn the tide with respect to the market.
Hey, Greg, this is Jonathan. When you recruited me back in, you tried to recruit me back in January of 2017. I was not ready. And then you actively recruited me in November of 2017 again, and I was ready to join on board. And I asked you very clearly and specifically, why do you want me on board? And you said, because you speak the truth and you are a good judge of reality. So I'm going to go out on a limb here and I have nothing to lose, and I just want to comment on all of the past materials. First of all, I'm a tremendous believer in this technology. Otherwise, I would not be on this project. And I promote our technology tirelessly in Asia, and we're doing a great job, and we're getting tremendous, tremendous activity. However, to say that the market is not paying attention to our technology updates, it runs counter to the fact that we have dropped disproportionately in market cap on coin market. And that has nothing to do with failure of communication of our achievements. Our achievements are considerable, and I applaud everybody that's contributing to it. What's really going on is that there is, and let's be totally open about this. There is a lot of concern, legitimate concern, about all sorts of things that have seemingly happened, whether or not they have happened. Despite our desire for radical transparency, there's a lot of doubt. There's a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt that has happened because of the fact that not everything has been clear, has been communicated. People who are making decisions have not been engaged with the community. And that makes me really sad. And it's unfortunate, and I'm not pointing any fingers. I've been really struggling mightily here in RChain Asia to just, be sticking to our knitting. But let's not deny the reality that there are lots of questions swirling around, and those questions need to be addressed. And I really hope that in the coming day, in the coming months, in the coming weeks, I jumped there, that there's more clarity. I don't think it's a matter of marketing. I don't think it's a matter of trumpeting our considerable technical successes. I really think it comes down to addressing these concerns. And I have nothing to lose in saying this. I don't need to be working. I could be retired and sitting and eating bonbons on a tropical beach somewhere. I just wanted to share that. And thank you for hiring me, Greg. And thank you for letting me speak.
No, I really appreciate it. I love this kind of dialogue. I think this is exactly the kind of dialogue. And I also like driving it in terms of data. Where's the drop? Is the drop from here to here? No, the drop is from here to here.
So Greg, if you look at the validator cell announcements, you could see a sharp drop after, based on the announcements as well. So, I mean, you can look at the data if not only based on the tech releases, also by other stuff that happened.
No, I absolutely agree. So
like I said this morning, Greg, there is a decoupling right now of price and actual news, and this is throughout the crypto market. So, Dror, I totally get what you're saying, but if you look at the entire crypto market, they also dropped at the same time. And I think it's coincidental that we happen to see the drop when we have news. And I will put this out there. I am, kind of an expert at technical analysis, and I'm happy privately to go over charts with anybody. And you can see what's happened. Now, I agree with Jonathan. We do have issues, but the price of rock is what every crypto, like Greg said, it's what every crypto project is experiencing now.
That's exactly right.
So
yeah, that's exactly right. And so I absolutely appreciate and laud engagement. I want to see more engagement. I want to see more demand for information. As an example, it's now a matter of bylaws that we produce quarterly quarterly compilations, and we had to change the bylaws to do that in order to be able to make a plausible application for the 501c12 status, right, which can potentially very positively impact any tax obligations. So these are the kinds of things that are absolutely on the radar and have been a part of what we're trying to do for the
Greg. I appreciate you. Every single meeting you talk about openness, and I would like to make the same testimonial Jonathan did. I really dare say, love this project and your role in it. At the same time, I would like to say that the annual meeting that we just had, or that we're having today, has drawn a lot of attention. And I think I agree with you that it's been very positive. And I think we're going to need to have these member meetings more often, either bi-monthly or quarterly, because there are a lot of things that go on within this space, and we need to be more on top of them.
I love that idea. I would love that. That's why I tried to put some kind of cadence in place with respect to governance, as well as the cadence in place with respect to the dev. What we're finding currently is that there ends up being event fatigue. People feel burned out with respect to the events, and this has a negative impact on the events that we really, really want to have people there on. So I agree with you 100% that we need more engagement, and I think we're going to have to get creative as a community about how that engagement happens. One of the things that I was hoping to do was to fractalize RChain, so that we have an RChain Asia, we have an RChain Europe, we have an RChain Africa, we have an RChain South America.
Yeah, Greg, I specifically disagree with you about fractalizing it on geographical grounds. I think that's a very, very bad idea.
Alan, I disagree with you very strongly about that, because I've got to say, with just 2 people in RChain Asia. Go ahead, Greg.
No, I would just echo what you're saying. I was just going to say that our experience on the ground is that time zones matter, and language really matters.
Yes.
Both of those things have presented extremely difficult problems for us to bridge, and they are extremely resource intensive to bridge, and they become much more resource efficient.
I appreciate your conclusions on that, but right now you're explaining the reasoning, and I think that reasoning needs to be a public discussion, because that's a very important question for us.
That's great, and I'm happy to have a public discussion.
I would actually like to humbly say that we are way off topic.
Yeah.
So if we're concerned about the price of rock, and we're
no, it isn't. No, it isn't about the price of rock. That's the important thing. This isn't about the price of rock. It's about the relationship between what we're delivering and how the market is perceiving us. And what I've been trying to say forever.
If I can so humbly say, I don't think the market is perceiving us incorrectly. I think the market is not measuring the value of rock based on the technology, and this also applies to stocks. The token for RChain is not being treated any differently than any other stock, right? Okay. If there is uncertainty in the company, there's uncertainty with what's going to happen.
Right. So let's take a look at where that uncertainty.
It's absolutely, in my humble opinion, is absolutely coming from the mismanagement of the token.
So here is where
the management of the token, or the lack of management of the token, the lack of clarity around financials. That's absolutely where it's coming from. And it's not a different rule that is applied to the for-profit IP, publicly traded sector. Same thing happens. The company gets hit with a lawsuit, the stock goes to the floor, because now there's uncertainty, right? And that's what we're seeing here. It doesn't matter, even in those instances, the quality of the technology at all. It has only to do with the executive management and the leadership in that company, and the certainty with which that company can meet its obligations and deliver on its promises to investors and customers.
So here's the event. Here's the event with respect to uncertainty. This is where we know that we have any sort of issue whatsoever with respect to our obligations.
I think if there was uncertainty around the amount of token that was going to be the validator sale, that would reflect it as well, Greg.
There was clear certainty. There was a board resolution that happens here. That's in GitHub and communicated on multiple community hangouts as to exactly how much was allocated for the validator sale. So that isn't supported.
I think we have to really look at the.
But let's take a look. Let's take a look at the claims. Here's where we have any sense of uncertainty with respect to delivering. Here's where the drop is.
I'll say also there hasn't been financial statements cleanly reported probably ever, but certainly since last year. that's a long time of financial.
I would actually I'd like to know when the immersion deal was inked.
So the
Where's that
immersion,
on the graph?
so the immersion deal gets inked here.
Yeah.
But
So I think that's where you, and if you look against
all of the
drop will start happening.
So again, all of the drop is here, not here.
Sorry, Greg, can you show the graph based on ETH and ROC only? Because having the crypto market falling and showing a down graph doesn't make sense. So if you compare it only with the ROC to ETH and look at that graph, you can get a sense of how we underperform the market.
Yes,
based on what dates?
So I
yes.
absolutely agree with you. But now let's look at what is driving that, and that's actually really clear. And I want people to understand that. What's driving that is a legal position that we have taken, which is the co-op must eschew any and all exchanges. We cannot be listed, and the co-op cannot.
Before you draw conclusions, Greg, can you show the numbers as requested, please? Because that's something we can get our hands around right now.
Okay.
The conclusions are speculative, of course.
Yeah. So we would have to go to CoinMarketCap. This is a slide, not an active thing. So I'm not going to do that but we can produce that. That's not a problem. But that's a separate activity here. What I would argue is that even there, the drop with respect to ETH is all in here. The vast majority of the drop with respect to ETH is in here.
So, Greg, what people don't understand is our technology is far superior to Ethereum's. Why is the market not reflecting that?
That's exactly right. And so the argument is that there are two basic factors. One is we have been following extremely strident legal advice. The co-op cannot be involved in listing on exchanges. In fact, we had a near 2.5-hour meeting yesterday because we have been approached by several large exchanges as to what the co-op's position would be. And
who were the attendees at that meeting, Greg?
The officers and council. So
who was at that meeting, Greg?
I just said that. The officers and council.
Who is council?
At the time, so we had two meetings. One was with David Otto. That's outside counsel. And then we had a review by Evan. Even though Evan is no longer functioning as in-house counsel, he gave us his considered opinion.
Is Evan still treasurer or secretary?
No, that's Kate.
Kate is secretary now.
Yeah.
So Greg, can you just explain what the opinion of council was on?
Sorry, my mistake. Evan retained his secretary position. My mistake. Yeah. Okay, go ahead. Can you?
I'm just curious as to exactly what the legal opinion was, and I don't know why that would not be information that could not be shared.
Oh no, we can easily share the information. So the issue is the creation of secondary markets. So there are several criteria that put the token at risk for being levied a security. So obviously some of this is related to the Howey test. Obviously some of this is related to utility, and obviously some of this is related to the creation of secondary markets. So with respect to the co-op, we can kind of, the co-op arrangement allows us to address many of the issues with respect to Howey. By the time we enter into node 8 or 9, we can make a plausible argument with respect to utility. It's even now we could possibly make a plausible argument with respect to utility. But the issue, but that doesn't address the concerns with respect to the creation of secondary markets. So
can you explain what the creation of secondary markets is? Can you just define that?
Yeah, an exchange would be a really good example of the creation of a secondary market. So now people are trading on the basis of the.
And what would the co-op's involvement in that be? Does the co-op? Why would the co-op be involved? Was it involved in KuCoin?
So that is such a great question, and I'm so glad you asked it. So it has been the case that several of our partners or other third parties have aggressively pursued getting the token listed on exchanges. And what this has resulted in for the major exchanges is they all come back to me personally asking for my ID. And there is no way for me to accidentally provide my passport or driver's license. So if you would like to have third parties manage this, then there is a tenuous legal opinion that it's okay for the third parties to come and ask me for my ID and my personal information. But I also got advice that I should put all my assets in a family trust fund in case the SEC comes after us for exactly this thing.
Okay, Greg, I don't want to derail the whole meeting, but this is obviously an important issue, and perhaps at the next meeting, or there should be some forum in which the details of this can be understood by our membership.
Great. I actually believe that we've covered the most important details. And this is so, but let's take a step back or take a step upward towards what this discussion was about. The discussion was, how can we manage the token, or how should we have managed the token? So the most strident legal advice we got was, do not in any way list the token on exchanges. This was this was reiterated by in-house counsel and by external counsel. So if the token is not listed on exchanges and someone comes along and lists the token on an exchange without involvement from the co-op, then we get the upside down signal that we've seen, because there's not the right kind of liquidity, and the people who are engaged in the trading are very, very far removed from the technical message. That's what is going on. And I
mean, there's so many things happening here, but I think if we consider it to be the concerns and confusions that are generated, we have to consider that there's a lot of people who want us to fail, and they give us these messages, and then we say, hey, wait a minute, and rather than forging ahead, and you have to answer all the messages. You have to identify what are the concerns, what are the confusions, and give answers, and answer all the questions. And
I absolutely agree with you. I absolutely agree with you. So as near as I can tell, unless anyone has a different explanation for how this has worked out, or why the dynamics are the way they are, I think it would be very difficult for someone to have made a different set of choices. We felt it was very, very disadvantageous and extremely legally risky, given the nature of our token, to do anything like what Ethereum did, right? Ethereum had their network and had their token, which is why it was reasonable to list on exchanges. Since our token, at least for the first year of our development, was going to be an ERC20 token, that put us in a very, very different place than Ethereum. And this is why we conducted ourselves in the way that we did.
Greg, we're not talking about the elephant in the room. The reason that Rock has fallen disproportionately compared to the market has nothing to do with our technical achievements or its perception or the marketing. It has to do with the fear, uncertainty, and doubt about concerning a bunch of things that are exceedingly unclear to really, really important people and really smart people. And this makes me really sad because I really do. I admire you tremendously. Your contributions to this project are amazing. But I think that despite all of our entreaties for radical transparency and support of the community and all of that, I think that's really, unfortunately, where the disconnect between our technical achievements and the valuation of our rock and also other things that have happened historically are happening here. And I don't want to go into all the details, and it makes me really sad, and I want to see this project succeed, and I'm going to do everything I can personally to continue supporting it, including trying to find licensing, sub-licensing for immersion, as I'm doing, trying to find, bridge loans to get us to mainnet. But let us not ignore the elephant in the room.
So what is the elephant in the room, in your opinion?
The elephant in the room, in my opinion, is the fact that the co-op management has allowed all of these rumors and possibly salacious accusations to go unaddressed. There's so little engagement by the current RChain management in community engagement and answering questions. Fear and uncertainty and doubt really thrive in an environment of darkness and uncertainty, and that I think is the big thing that has failed.
Okay,
I actually don't think it is a lack of recent communication. I think it is a lack of discipline. It is a lack of processes. It is a lack of operational excellence that we're observing in the cooperative management. And I'm not actually pinpointing the finger at any one individual. However, I will say this: in my 20 years of experience and expertise in working in a large number of organizations, an organization is the reflection of its leader, without exception. Right? Apple is Apple because of Steve Jobs. Microsoft is Microsoft because of Bill Gates. Oracle is Oracle because of Larry Ellison. And an organization is a reflection of its leader. And it is something that I have held to close to chest for many, many years. I have given this advice to many individuals. I have observed it in the organizations where I have worked. Simple thing as you bring in a new CTO, the entire footprint of engineering changes. The personality of the engineering organization changes. The way people operate changes. And I have just sat on the sidelines and observed. And I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt that this organization is no different, right? Because the actors are no different. The structure of the organization doesn't matter. And I think anybody who has observed organizations in the past, as you look back and reflect, I think you'll find the same thing that I do, that I have. You see it with our presidents. You see it across the board. An organization is a reflection of its leader, pure and simple. It is a mirror that holds, it's a mirror that is held up to the leader. So that's all I have to say about that. Yeah, so that's my insight. That's all I can afford. All I can share about this topic. I think we should move on. I don't know if there's other updates to be had or anything else, but I'm going to leave it with that.
Well, I appreciate the feedback. I certainly do, and I think that I hope that the community will work as hard as they can to provide a message about what we're actually delivering. Because I don't think that it's simply a lack of engagement in the community. From here is the last Lisa Rice update about the financials.
Hey, Greg, we all want this to succeed. We all do. and we are all very grateful for where you brought us to.
Um,
Let me say that.
and so I hear you. Unfortunately, it would be wonderful if I could hand this over. That would be great. I would love to be able to do that. We're not anywhere near that point, and this is what I've tried to communicate as clearly as possible. We're at the most dangerous point transitioning from Mercury to Venus. Anyone who thinks that Mercury is a reasonable place to leave things off will be sorely mistaken. And there isn't the kind of understanding that has been steeped in about 25, 30 years of reflecting on exactly what needs to get done. More importantly, I think most of this will simply disappear at the moment that we have a fairly large fiat capital bank account, which is what we're striving towards in the next few weeks. I also would like to say in closing that with respect to that, what we will see if it turns out that IOB 5 or some variation passes is that the co-op is actually without the kind of maneuvering or flexibility or wiggle room that it's going to need as it begins to address the next inflection point. Because the next inflection point is going to be many times more complexity. As soon as the network launches, it will be under attack. And the attacks will grow as the number of assets and transaction volumes increase. So,
Greg, I think it's possible to interpret what Meta said as saying that you, in particular, are the leader of this project, and you need to figure out what has been going on. You need to surround yourself with the kinds of people that can provide transparency, provide good judgments, and so forth and so on, and that this needs to happen. Something that you need to think about.
Oh, absolutely. The whole transition phase from this point up through March is all about providing getting some vice presidents involved. So what we'd like to do is to have a vice president of marketing, a vice president of engineering, and a vice president of community at a minimum. To take this forward. Additionally, there should be eventually a vice president of research.
Why is it that all of our vice presidents today are board members and the board is not an independent kind of organization?
Actually, we only just created one vice president position, so we don't have vice presidents. We have officers, and typically, it's very good for the officers to serve on the board, at least in a startup. Over time, we can have more independence, but without the kind of, it's been very difficult actually to get the level of engagement that we need at all levels. And that includes the board. The board needs to be able to be conversant and familiar with the major contracts that represent opportunities and liabilities for the cooperative. So this kind of engagement is incredibly demanding, right? So when we do bring board members on, they need to be engaged, and it's very difficult if they are not already officers for them to have that kind of familiarity and engagement. So at least in the initial period, it's actually not a bad thing to have significant overlap between officers and board members. But,
hey, Greg.
Yeah.
Greg, I want to ask a very clear, simple public question.
Mm-hmm.
What do you currently view your greatest contribution and relationship to the entire RChain project to be? Where could you apply your brilliance and your skills best, given a clear and honest self-evaluation and listening to feedback from the community?
I would have to reflect on that. I mean, at the end of the day, after we craft this transition, my relationship to the co-op is absolutely going to change.
And do you have any notions of what that
over time? Essentially what it will come down to is that if the co-op actually wants me to attend to something, they have to come and ask me. So far, I even begrudgingly had to take founder shares, and I only did that because our outside counsel and our COO and our chief strategist all came to me and said, investors are looking at us funny because you don't have any founder shares.
Understood.
All right, so
just to interject, I said because I think that you deserve founder shares.
Okay, well, sorry. So John said something different, but certainly David and Kenny have reported to me what they've heard from outside parties, that people look at us cross-eyed if I don't have the proper engagement or proper motivation, and they don't seem to understand what my actual motivations are.
What is your motivation, Greg?
So most of what's going on right now is noise to me. My motivation is to roll out the platform that, in fact, I can give you the full vision in about less than a minute.
Awesome.
First, we need to roll out the platform that provides us the decision-making capacity. So we need to be able to coordinate with each other financially. We need to be able to coordinate with each other in terms of governance, and we need to be able to coordinate with each other in terms of the expression of sentiment.
Greg, why do we need the RChain platform to do that? Why can't we build that on the tools that exist today?
Because they don't scale and they're centralized. So we kind of, hopefully if you're here at this meeting, you've drunk that Kool-Aid. And if you don't, then we can have a sideline conversation about that. So essentially what we need to do is to reboot the financial technologies as coordination technologies. We need to reboot the governance technologies as technologies, and we need to reboot the social media technologies as technologies for all the reasons that I've outlined to this community on several occasions.
Yep.
That provides us with the basic decision-making capacity. The next wave, after having rolled out this network, the next wave is to roll out a physical network. So we need a network of places that are called, RChain or R House or whatever you want to call them. And there's a reasonable market, there's a reasonable business concern here. And this basically matches what you see with Kovo or WeWork or any of the other office places. I think even Capital One recently launched an office space play. So this is happening within the financial sector as well. So there's a 3-layer onion here. The 3-layer onion is related to, first, we have a very clear business model. Second layer is that it provides the kind of marketing that we need, that is very different than the kind of marketing that one normally has. If people come into work ostensibly on their things to an R House-like operation, then they begin to rub shoulders with other RChain operatives. And at that point, they begin to learn a lot more about RChain and get involved and bring their business in. So it's a very natural kind of marketing fit. But the third and more important thing is that we must have a physical network that's going to be able to help people as we start to see massive changes. We're going to see massive changes in terms of what is arable land. We're going to see massive changes in terms of what is coastline. Please just go read the UN report if you don't believe me, or go read any of a dozen reports that are talking about this. So this provides a place for people to begin to congregate and begin to transition in a way that is less than riots and violence. So that's the real secret inner reason for rolling out the physical network. So first we have a decision-making apparatus, then we have a physical network for people to come to. And at that point, if we have that much in place, I could say, job done. I don't have to work on this anymore, right? Because that will be more or less the end of the runway that I have in terms of the creative energy to be able to spend on this. as opposed to playing music and tending my bees and playing with my kids. So this is the most basic and simple boiled down vision. We have to roll out, and there's no one else to do it because no one else seems to be stepping up to the plate.
A trustworthy world computer.
Well, yeah, but it's not just the world computer, right? It has to be. It's not just the compute apparatus. We have to have literal physical places where regenerative culture. If you want to understand what I'm talking about, go look at the recent article in The Guardian by one of the founders of Organic Valley. We must begin to develop a regenerative culture.
I'll buy an R-Box.
Yeah, and exactly. And we have a very, very limited time in which to get this done.
Hey, Greg, I'm sorry to be such a persistent gadfly here, but
no, it's great.
But as you know, and I don't think that everybody else on this call knows, I spent 5 years of my life from 2010 to 2015 helping to architect the world's most comprehensive computational engine to calculate the economic benefits that nature provides. And this platform, this world-changing platform, is now currently being used by the United Nations and 40 countries around the world, and is helping to save ecosystems around the planet because it gives nature a voice at the negotiation table. Nature is allowed to say to people who are trying to abuse her, look, I'm actually worth, $500 million annually to your economy. So I'm familiar with that line of argument. And I embrace your vision, but you're not answering the question that I asked and other people are asking is, what do you view your practical day-to-day role optimally for the success of this platform that you and all of us so passionately believe in?
Yeah, I don't work like that. I work I work in terms of deliverables. So I've outlined what my deliverables are. And then I wear whatever hat I have to wear in order to get it all done. And that's what I've been doing.
Right, but I think I think you need to no, I can't tell you what you need to do. I think that there are
and this is why it's humorous to me to hear someone say that that I personally reflect a lack of discipline.
No, I didn't say that. I did not say that, Greg.
No, someone else did. And it's very funny.
So, Greg, I understand your point about needing to build a physical platform, but my understanding of RChain as a crypto blockchain was that we're building a digital platform. And then, as I've heard you say, actually quite eloquently, is that we build the road and then it's up to other people to build and surprise us what they build on that road. So,
yeah, of course. That's all about alignment of interests, right? So the crypto community will help us deliver the first piece of this.
I am very concerned about your statement now that you want to build, and I've heard rumors about it, so it's actually good for me to hear it come from you, that we're purchasing real estate. We've set up in Europe the community to build out all these different collaborative environments. To me, it seems like that should be another company, another effort, but not the RChain Co-op, which is building this digital blockchain.
And I'm very, very happy to have that conversation. I was sharing with you my vision. Now, whether or not RChain Co-op can ultimately extend to be the vehicle for that, we'll figure it out.
But we've already
if RChain Co-op, no, we had to have an office space, and this turned out to be it's paying for itself almost immediately.
But we paid cash for our house, and any real estate investment person will tell you you leverage money, you don't pay cash.
Yeah, understood. In this particular case, it turns out to be quite good for us. If you want to look at the numbers, we can go over the numbers, but we'll do that separately.
And buying real estate was a good decision because there had not been proper balancing of the portfolio back in February when I was pounding the table saying, we ought to diversify our portfolio.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and this is exactly what I'm trying to do. But more importantly, if you relate this back to IOB5, what's going to happen as a result of IOB5 is that RChain Cooperative is largely going to capitalize most of its efforts using fiat. So it will stop walking the walk. Most of its efforts now are going to be much higher. Like if you even just look at user acquisition numbers for WhatsApp or things like that, we're talking, scores of billions of dollars in order to ultimately to get to the kind of a user acquisition that you'd like to get for these kinds of platforms, even for a platform company like this. So our spend currently is nothing by comparison to what the spend will have to be in the upcoming days, and moreover, IOB5 doesn't even begin to address the issues of what happens if we have a lawsuit. What if, because we do have hundreds of millions of transactions running through the platform, we actually have a problem and we have to address it, and the best way to address it is settlement. Oh, we don't have the capital for that. Right? So what IOB5 is going to do is to force us to be a largely fiat-based company, and this is just straight up common sense from anyone who's run companies of this size before. So there are all kinds of trends that are going to happen as a result of where we are that will in fact rebalance the books, but they're going to rebalance the books in a way that's unfortunate for RChain Cooperative if it wants to have integrity and walk the walk. But people will vote the way they vote. When people voted for the 200 million limitation for 2018, we stuck by it, and actually we've come well under that limitation. So whatever the community wants, that's what RChain Cooperative will do. But I'm sharing with you the connection amongst all these different things. The vast majority, if RChain makes it through this little wormhole, and I sincerely hope it does, then the next piece of this is an inflection point that people are not really thinking about. The tech in Venus is rocket science. The tech that we've done up to this date is not rocket science because someone paved the way for everyone. Someone actually went and built a couple of iterations of the tuple space that was required to get to a high performance R space. Someone worked out the computational model and deployed it in the market to the tune of $75 million in the first year. So all of that was already worked out well in advance for decades. All of the engineering questions it was easy to hand those over, with the exception of Casper. So there was virtually no rocket science in this sprint or this release cycle. But for all of Venus, we will have absolute rocket science, and so the technical complexity is going to go through the roof.
Greg, nobody doubts your considerable contributions.
No, I'm not talking about my contributions. It has nothing to do with my contributions. I'm trying to talk about the risks that the organization is facing. Forget about Greg Merritt. Okay? What I'm talking about is trying to label and plan for the complexities that the community is about to face.
Right, so, but I think there's different kinds of complexities, and one of them has to do with fiduciary and managerial and leadership styles, and I think that is
right. But the important thing is that the community is about to hamstring itself, because there are complexities. There are complexities here that will only be addressed by finances, by having the right kind of finances. Right.
And I agree, and that's why
catastrophe, calamity, and opportunity are just three of those.
Hey, Greg, can I say one thing about this, about the IOB5?
Yes.
I'd just like to mention that if we're trying to build a network that's decentralized, and I know that word gets thrown around a lot, but if we're trying to build a network, having one entity as the failsafe or the holder of the asset that denominates the network is not a solution that will succeed. It's not a network. I strongly believe this. I know other people do. I understand your points combating it, and the co-op being the decentralized network. But unfortunately, if there is an asset that is to be held in a decentralized manner, then it has to be done in a way where not one controls an enormous amount of supply. And I think that's really important.
No, I agree with you, but that's not the issue that I'm trying to raise. The issue that I'm trying to raise is that it isn't about an inordinate amount of supply. It's about making sure that the supply that is available for catastrophe. And right now, what will happen as a result of IOB5 is that in order to just fend for itself in a market where the complexities are now greater than 10x what we face to date, the co-op will be forced to deal with fiat.
Greg, I have a question. Why are we having this discussion right now? Why didn't it happen at the time that IOB5 was proposed? Why didn't it happen 6 months ago?
Well, I've been having it in back rooms and in every community meeting I could possibly have. As John
I've been in all the community meetings. I have not heard you say what you said today.
Well, IOB5 didn't come along until whatever it was 2 or 3 weeks ago, right? That's when it seemed to have enough flesh and voice.
Yeah, so IOB5 was passed by the board of directors, which you're a member of, so you knew when it was coming. And that would have been a good time to speak about it rather than after the vote's already taken place.
Oh, you're saying it was placed on the ballot. Yeah, that's right. And so what I have done is to communicate. I spoke with Jason at length. I spoke with John at length, and I've spoken with as many community members as I could. I did not raise it in this particular forum because we had other issues to deal with. And I was hoping against hope that Jason would at least provide the catastrophe opportunity fund as a result. And we were almost there, and then he backed down at the last minute. But I also hope that we have a community full of wise people. It would be great if
Greg, I think that to have a community full of wise people that are in tune with your ideas requires you to be a little bit more forthright about them. Requires you to deal with people in public rather than back rooms, requires us all to know what's going on.
Okay, I think that your perception of this being deliberate is, I don't know how to say this. There are so many hours in the day. I speak, I work from before 5:30 in the morning until after 12 in the at midnight.
I don't doubt that. I think what Meta was saying is that to be more effective, you need to place your finger on things that are important for the community to know, important for the people who work around you to know, and that.
Okay, thank you, Ellen. I appreciate your.
Greg, I have a question. Can you stop sharing your screen so people can see you speak? I just got a request from Gary. Thank you. All right, we can continue.
So you want my camera on?
No. They just wanted to do like a gallery view because yeah. So
yeah, camera on is good.
Yeah.
Okay, sure. All right. Anyway, so we're 23 minutes past the hour. I really appreciate all the feedback. I take it to heart. I contemplate each of the different viewpoints. I genuinely believe that everyone is going to be exceptionally happy in a few short weeks in which after we have flipped our song properties. And at that point, I think we'll have a very, very different conversation.
There is a perception of dysfunction in the organization, and it needs to be addressed by us helping Greg provide the answers to the concerns.
Yes.
Right. And, they need to be documented, and, Greg needs help with that. He's got many other things to do. So, and Greg has to accept help.
Greg accepts help all the time.
I think that's not the case, Greg. I think that the perception is that you do things without letting people know. The immersion deal of many other important things have been done without knowledge of others.
I disagree. He's been talking about that since the beginning. The details of the deal probably should have been more transparent, but
I mean,
Yeah. There's probably a middle ground between Jim and Alan's perspective. So right now, I agree that first of all, I mean, directly to Jim's point, I have made no decision, like 0 decisions above 25K that doesn't have a board resolution behind. So in terms of the bylaws of this organization, I have been 100% making sure that those people who are in decision-making capacities are informed and engaged and have dialogue.
Why is it that the board is the decision-making capacity and not the membership?
Because that's how the bylaws structure the organization.
It's a republic.
Yes, no, that is not, Greg, I have serious disagreements about that, and I guess we can take this to the next step at the meeting tonight.
Yeah, that's fine, but that's exactly how the bylaws are written, and that's how they are. Now, whether or not someone else mute them? Thank you.
Hey guys, just I want to chime in one really quick thing. For any of the issues of that other stuff we've talked about, I think the organization was very clearly set up to be this republic. And if you're looking for something else, this wasn't the right organization. So like, I don't think that
the organization was set up as something to return a portion of expenditures of ROC or REV. That's never happened. That never will happen. That's fictitious.
Whoa. So Alan, okay. So first of all, that's absolutely. I'm going to say very clearly that can only happen once the network is live.
Yeah.
It cannot be the case that we return REV to people who have spent REV until REV is live.
So why do the bylaws say that somebody has to have made purchases within a year from RChain when there are no T-shirts available, as Joshi Orndorff said?
So I think that's a misunderstanding. It's purchases from within a year of REV from the point that mainnet is live. I think
that's not in the corporate bylaws.
That is the intent of the language. The intent of the language is you're purchasing REV.
Greg, I have to say that I believe that this is misleading, and I believe that if you continue down this path, you're misleading us as we've been misled in the past.
Okay.
I'm happy to say that it's probably Evan Jensen that caused the misinterpretation, but the fact is that the articles and the bylaws do not reflect our actual practice.
Okay, so I can guarantee you that the intent of the language, and if Ed is still on the call, he can verify this.
Yep. Go ahead.
That the intent with respect to the rebates was always that you are required to purchase REV, and if you purchase that REV and use it in the running of smart contracts, then you will receive a rebate.
Okay, Greg, we can discuss the intent or the theory or whatever. That's not our practice. The question is, who owns the cooperative? Who directs the cooperative?
Who directs the cooperative is clearly stated in the bylaws. That's the board.
I think that the bylaws say that the membership directs the cooperative, and the board serves at the behest of the membership. And that's been confusing to everybody.
Well, but the timing of that is normally 1 year, or through special resolutions that are hard to make happen with a large number of members. And of course, there's the board and the officers listen to the membership quite a bit.
Quite a bit.
Anytime a member comes to a board member, they can put a resolution or item of business to a board member, and then the board members can then discuss the item of business and vote on it if there's sufficient support within the board for doing that. But that's the structure of the cooperative, and so Alan, I think maybe one of the things that the disconnect between you and me is that the structure that we have now is adapted from the REI bylaws. And I never intended it as the final shape or structure for RChain Cooperative. But it's what we have right now. And as we gain experience with this particular form of governance, which is what we're doing now, there are going to be pain points. And those pain points we want to record and then in a disciplined way, look at changing.
Yes, Greg, I think we should be doing that. And I think we should be doing that with bi-monthly meetings so that we can arrive at the situation that you're describing as what your intent has always been.
Alan, let me interject for a second. Is Megan on the call? Because I think she had wanted to bring up a couple points today, and I want to.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sure. That sounds good.
I don't see her name. Maybe she.
Okay, but I have to say, I love the engagement. It's amazing that the last two. That, you know, I wish it didn't take a. I wish it didn't take
a bi-monthly meeting of members.
I don't. Okay, fine, Alan. And if you want to organize that and drive that and make it happen, go for it. Right. This is a good thing. This is a wonderful thing. Drive it. Right. Otherwise, okay. What you're saying is that this is another thing that the that the co-op officers have to take on.
No, the membership needs to take it on, and I will drive it.
That's awesome. That's fantastic. 105 people watching on the call. This is what we want to see. This is like, I wish it didn't take a crisis to have this kind of engagement. I wish we had this kind of engagement when things are going really, really well. But I'm delighted that we're having this kind of engagement. It's fantastic. No, so I'm really,
Thank you, Greg. Thanks for supporting it.
No, this is wonderful. So let's have this kind of engagement at the membership meeting tonight. The doors open at the Fauntleroy Hall at 5.
Can we come to our house before 5 and carpool over?
You can walk to Fauntleroy from our house.
I would not. I'm sorry, Alan. I would not recommend that. I mean, I'm going there to pick up my gear and leaving because the amount of cars are going to be probably at our house is kind of a problem, right? Like,
but we're all welcome to come to our house. That's my question.
The venue, I'll be at the venue.
I would love to see as many faces as possible in our house.
I mean, there are neighbors. I'm just saying, like, if there's 50 cars there, I would just be careful about that. That's all I'm saying.
Okay. No, I'll Uber.
Yeah, fine. That's great. Wonderful. Please come to our house.
Free parking.
And there is free parking at Fauntleroy. So thank you, everyone, for your feedback, and I look forward to finding a way through this particular wormhole or not hole. I think it's absolutely it is very possible for us to do this, and I think if any community deserves to be able to make it through, it's this one. So.
Woo!
Well, we've already succeeded. I mean, this is open to the world as a gift.
Yeah, that's
it has value no matter what happens to us.
No, that's true. There is real value, but I think we can make it all the way through Venus. I think that's a real possibility for this.
Absolutely, we have to do it. We're going to do it.
And I'm going to close my contribution to this meeting by saying that if people think, like I recently read that someone valued the potential of the platform here at over $1 trillion, which, by the way, which is a very similar valuation to BizTalk. But that is nothing by comparison to what the Ladle algorithm does. The Ladle algorithm delivers at an order of magnitude greater value. And I would really love to see the Ladle algorithm in the hands of the community. It would be my greatest pleasure if the community could have the Ladle algorithm as an extra tool in the toolkit in order to address the kinds of coordination problems that we are all going to be facing very, very, very shortly. Because we won't, based upon what I've seen in this community, we won't make the 12-year mark. We are not going to adapt our consumption patterns to hit the 12-year mark. And as a result, we're going to see much greater calamity. But we're still going to have to coordinate.
Having said that, I would love to see you focus on the ladle algorithms as opposed to managing a company.
Greg, you mentioned you take all the feedback and you consider it after the meetings. I wonder if you could briefly summarize the feedback that you've received today.
Chris, can you restate?
You said you like the feedback and that you take it and consider it after these meetings. And I wonder if you could simply summarize the feedback you've been given during this meeting.
Okay, so let's begin with some of the most the highlights. So from Meta, we heard that the organization is a reflection of the leader, and the organization doesn't have discipline, doesn't have good operations or functional operations. And there was a third point, which I'll have to recall in a little bit. From Alan, one of the key practical points that he provided was that we need to have biannual or bi-monthly membership meetings, and that would address or begin to address the issue of not having enough information come out to the community in addition to the board. Also from Alan, we heard that there was a lack of clarity on sort of the nature of the governance and the expectations as results, as it is related to what one is purchasing versus what one is rebating on, and other items like that. Jonathan gave us some fairly clear and pointed feedback with respect to the elephant in the room, as he called it, which was the fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And he seems to be hinting at me focusing on not day-to-day stuff. So that was and Jonathan also spoke about his contributions with respect to Earth economics and his alignment with respect to some of the climate change goals that I have voiced and hopes for the co-op. And there was a spirited discussion on where the fall was with respect to the token, and how that was related to market signal. People gave their opinions about that point. So that's what I can recount in a 4-minute summary. Did I miss important points, Chris? Or points?
I'm not sure, but I just wanted the folks who gave feedback to have an opportunity to understand how you understood it.
Okay, but so was there anyone in the room who felt like I missed a key or important point?
I think the key point that you missed is that what is currently happening to the market value of rock, and of course we're living in a sentiment driven as opposed to fundamentals driven kind of market. There's really no way to measure the fundamentals of an organization like ours. I think the key point that you forgot to acknowledge is that the fact that rock had been hovering in the 40s and 50s on coin market cap in a sentiment driven market, and then along with the fall of the price of all crypto, we fell to the 110 point. I think that discrepancy has to do with the fear, uncertainty, and doubt about management and fiduciary responsibility. And the fact that it has not been dealt with is a failure of management in many respects. So that, I think, is the one thing that you missed.
Okay, good. So thank you. I hear the point. So the point is that or as you've summarized the point is that the rock's position on coin market cap relative to other tokens has fallen, and your perception is that is the case because of sentiment of the market.
Yes.
Good.
I mean, I would also add too. I know how much I get paid to do work. The reality is the co-op did get investment last year. And I mean, I just want to know if the burn rate of the capital that the co-op is spending each month is more or less agreed upon by the membership, right? Because, for example, I mean, in summer of 2016 or 2016, Waves raised 30,000 Bitcoin, and their burn rate was about $700,000 a month, right? And this was way before a Bitcoin price pump. So I just wanted to throw that out there as well. Like going forward, if there's more capital coming in, perhaps, Greg, because you just mentioned the immersion sale ongoing, I think there needs to be a different conversation on how the burn rate of the co-op, because if you don't conserve those resources, it's just assets and liabilities, cash in, cash out, right? You're just going to run out of funds. So if that burn rate's not addressed and it made transparent to the co-op, and I'm not talking about every single individual contractor or otherwise, like just telling, how much you're getting paid for this. Like it's not a pissing contest in that respect, but like in general, there has to be some sort of monetary policy or financial modeling so you can contain that burn rate. And then there will be no surprise, because some people may perceive some contractors getting paid or hearing it on the grapevine, reflective companies, this or Pythia getting paid this or that, this and that. At the end of the day, if people think that contractors or otherwise are dumping on the market, when in fact they could just be cashing out a little bit of what they paid, but when 6,000 people cash out, there goes your entire market, right? So again, I think cash flow and cash in, cash out needs to be addressed. And I don't know how to address that, but that's something that I would seriously take into concern going forward.
Sure, and we actually have those models, and we can provide them to any member that wants to see them. Our burn rates are reasonable for a company of this size, and ridiculous for a company delivering the value that we're delivering. So if you look at the total number of things that we're delivering, and it would be a career-changing delivery to deliver a high-performance storage solution like this. That alone should be more than enough to deliver a high-performance storage solution with a brand new query model that has this capability. Again, that ought to be career-changing. And market changing, but we have a lot more that we're delivering. So if you compare the burn rate to the delivery, we are ridiculous in terms of the value to burn. However, if you look at just the size of the company and the number of things that we have to attend to, the burn rate is very reasonable. And it's John, do you have I don't want to misquote the figures. Do you have a good number for us right now?
What's the specific question?
The question is, what's our monthly burn rate currently?
I would estimate right now, to like the best of my knowledge, just based on me spitballing it, is like 750 grand.
Yeah, it's about
of liquid cash, not including any of the rocks.
Yeah, exactly. That's the number I was going to say.
So maybe again, so to clear up the misconceptions there, if it's liquid cash and not rock, then again, that those points need to be addressed. Like just locking down the treasury, cash in, cash out, that would just stop all the discussion on that point, or it should, right? Because you can just point to that information, and be like, stop misquoting us, or here's just a basic model of what's going on, and you can track that over time. So I will stop that there because I don't want to like keep going on this.
It's a fair discussion. I mean, my approach to this has been that we want to put rock in the hands of those who are delivering value to the community. That's why I think it's a better model in general to use rock to compensate people. Of course, that only works if we have decent liquidity, or we have people who can work without without needing to turn that rock into cash immediately. The market,
and it requires a higher market price for rock that will smooth everything.
Well, again, that's why I left the conditions the way I did. So if people don't have to cash out rock, then the market price of rock doesn't matter. They're working essentially for equity.
So, Greg, how come the sorry, how come the rock portions are not locked? If
How come the rock portions are not locked? How do I interpret that?
so, if you say you're giving rock because you're assuming people will hold them, and you want them to hold them, why?
How come the people are being compensated? So for larger values, like, so there are some contractors who have taken larger positions in rock, and they have agreed to lock up positions. For smaller positions, that we have left that up entirely to the people that we're compensating.
Right. Okay. And John, do you know the burn rate including rock?
I'm not sure. Also, too, I'm not the treasurer, right? Like,
okay, I just wondered if you had an estimate. That's fine.
Yeah, no worries.
We can get Kate to provide that information, and she's going to.
Greg, could we expect to see a current balance sheet and a statement of cash flow tonight at the annual meeting?
Sure. You saw a summary just a few days ago.
I saw a summary of a balance sheet, but I didn't see a statement of cash flow, and I think that's what people are interested in.
And that's exactly what you'll be seeing tonight.
So we'll have a full financial report tonight, including all that. Okay.
Thank you, Steve.
Okay. So I'm delighted that there's so much engagement. It's really good to see it. But I really should.
I think all of these concerns and confusions need to be in our FAQ or something, so that people don't feel like they don't have answers to these things, and just saying them in these meetings isn't enough.
I think you're right. I think part of what I had been hoping was that the community hangouts would become the central point of communication, so that those people interested in RChain could come to the community hangouts to find the information they wanted. I think one of the things that we'll do moving forward is to provide transcripts of the hangouts, so that people can search the text without having to run through the video. I think that's going to be an important thing. As it stands, we can't possibly address all the channels that we have to address and still get stuff done without a much larger burn rate on marketing. So that was pretty much what we would have to do, is to find a way to have one place where we can communicate the bulk of the information, and the aim is to make this community hangout be that. I think what we can do to support that intention is to provide a transcript of each of the sessions.
Oh, by the way, I would like to encourage everybody here to join our weekly RChain Asia debrief, where we summarize what we're doing in Asia with currently only 2 staff, and we're getting all sorts of invitations from national governments to present at huge conferences, and I want to share other ways that possibly RChain projects can work. So,
I think we're going to need to be able to turn those leads into something actionable for either the portfolio companies or for the co-op, or both. I think
that's exactly what we're working on. So I encourage you to check the members' calendar, and please join us Friday noon at Singapore time.
Which is what time in?
That's 9 p.m. That's 9 p.m. PST.
So 9. Okay, all right. Don't go out on Friday nights. got the message. Understood. All right, guys. Thank you so much. I really appreciate all of this, and we'll talk again at the members meeting in a few hours. Ciao.
Yeah. Thank you,
Bye.
Greg.
Cheers. Bye.